Which, pity we hadn't thought of this like 65 episodes earlier, but
yes.
Anyway.
All right. Yeah, ready when you are then. What? This is episode, hold on, I've got the notes. It is
79, I think.
Yeah, I think your date is mislabeled there.
Just looking for a picture of that breakfast. There it is. Oh, yeah. Right. Lovely stuff. Okay, here we go. 70, what do we say there? 79 or 78?
79.
78. 9. Okay. Okay, good morning. No, not good morning. Okay, welcome everyone to episode 79 of the Tokyo Jazz Joints podcast. We're back. We're just as bad as ever. James, how are you this week? Fortnight?
Yeah, has it been a fortnight? Wow, that doesn't seem that long. I'm good,
it's just
man.
Nice to hear you use the word fortnight. But
I'm good. Little tired. I was missed you yesterday, my brother. I had an old school jazz quesadilla yesterday. Up and out of the house by 9. 90-minute train ride out to deep Western Tokyo. Hitting the ground, doing the hard work for our loyal listeners, only to be foiled yet again at the mysterious jazz bar Crescent, which you mentioned.
Right, what is it to do with Crescent? I mean, seriously.
Well, basically, they had changed their hours from 11 to 7, and I was like, great, okay, 11, I'll get there right on time. He doesn't have a website. He doesn't use social media. And
Google is not trustworthy with this one.
Show up and Google didn't have the new hours because it was just starting a new year. And it's like, our New Year's hours start from 2 p.m. And I was like, oh, right. So it was a bit of a rough start. But made it to a couple places, though, including the wonderful Jazz Panja, which we discussed last week. They remembered you very fondly, I should say, Philip.
Fondly, goodness.
Yes. I'm quite happy to talk about your visit and to just talk about the place. And it was a good day out, but long, cold, and a little tired. Or maybe I'm just getting older. I don't know.
Probably a combination of both, I'd say. That's good to hear. I'm glad you got the Panja. I'm glad that he remembered me. I did tag them in the when we posted the episode, but I suspect probably a lot of it wouldn't make much sense, but good to include people nevertheless. And this is episode 79, so we're now firmly rooted in May 2024, and we had just left the wonderful King Kong Kang last week, and it's a new day. To be precise, it's the 11th of May 2024, and this place is a place that the first place that we're going to talk about today is one of those ones that I think the name really was what sort of drew us, because it was called Vanguard, which obviously probably first and foremost brings up the village Vanguard in your mind if you're into jazz. And I think we sort of hemmed and hawed slightly about this one. And actually it turned out in hindsight that we were very lucky to have gone when we did, because the opening hours, I think, were even shorter than we had expected. So I think when we got there, just looking at we took a train out, let's see, what we doing, this 9:25. So it wasn't that close. We got there it was about half an hour, 40 minutes on the train. We got there about 10:15. I'm pretty sure they were closing around like 11:30 or something. Like, we were in there for probably an hour and a half at the most, and they were definitely getting to the point of packing, maybe midday or something. But I mean, Vanguard was very much in that category of, roadside place, probably most people, unless you're local, going by car, and, quite a big, expansive, sprawling kind of wooden house, and incredibly charming. I remember it very, very fondly, not least for that fabulous breakfast that we had.
Oh, yeah. I think we were, there was a couple reasons we weren't sure if it was going to make our final cut. One was because we were down in Hiroshima Prefecture, but it's so far in the suburbs. It's a separate city. It's in Tomo City. And I think the second reason, at least for me, was that you have to be careful with places named Vanguard. in Japan. Philip, you will know, and I think a lot of our listeners who have either lived here or been here will know that many a jazz fan has been shockingly fooled by going to the store, Village Vanguard.
Wrong-footed. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Which is, how would you describe it? It's kind of a sort of a smaller version of a Don Quixote with books and character goods and just very not jazzy.
It's sort of like it's kind of a hipper Don Quixote. Like it's the sort of place that you go to get like sweets and candy that you only would ordinarily get in your own country, and there's a lot of books and
a lot
kind
of idle
like
posters, and I definitely had
like
one. I know in
CDs,
Shimokita,
like it's a really
where it used to live, right? So I remember thinking, like, just because a place is called Vanguard doesn't mean it's going to be very jazzy. The location looked kind of, it was a bit of a trek from the station, wasn't it, to that big house? I mean, it was a good 15 minutes or so. But yeah, you were right. Once we got up into there, and you were correct as well, it's very much a breakfast and lunch place because they take a long break after lunch in the afternoon. And a lot of the Japanese write-ups about it online are about the food. Not a lot of people writing about the music there, actually, although he was playing some really great tunes. But it was a really sweet place. We ordered some breakfast. And then do you remember the master came over to talk to us? And I have in the notes here that he was really chatty, really friendly, but there was quite a lot of talk about his recovery from cancer. And,
we got a lot of information in that short space of time. Because actually, it was one of those places where, it was definitely all locals, mostly men, and probably one of the most kind of, like in old westerns when the saloon doors open and somebody comes in and the whole place just falls silent. It was that sort of like just a lot of the people just looking like, what is happening? Like, why are you here? And yet they were knocking out. Like, I have a picture of this breakfast. I mean, it was quite. There's some lovely bread on there. There was one kind of like an omelette. Got some nice bacon, baked potato. There was a salad, coffee, and it was all very reasonable. I think you just went for what looks like the very chunky doorstep toast with a lovely bit of parsley on top, which I know you're very partial to in the mornings.
The very simple A set for me, the toast and coffee.
But A set for you.
You had the full Monty, I think, yeah?
I didn't regret it, I tell you. But no, you're right. He came over eventually to kind of chat and ask what we were doing. I've got a few notes. He said that they'd opened in 1981, but actually they said that used to be 11 p.m., but he said quite openly, which again is not something you always necessarily get in Japan. I remember us commenting on sort of how open he was about it, but he said, I've had cancer, or I have cancer, and now we close at a shorter, we have shorter opening hours. It used to be open till 11 p.m., but I guess it's just not possible. I think he mentioned obviously going to the hospital for appointments and kind of things. And I don't know if it was 100% clear whether he had been cured of the cancer or whether he still had it.
Yeah, it was interesting because he was rather slim guy, but I remember thinking, and I have in the notes actually underneath the cancer, I said, looks pretty good, and certainly is very smiley. So I think the fact that he was very open to talk to two random foreigners that just come in, asking a couple questions, means that maybe he's past the worst. Or it could have been, I mean, Philip, how many times have we gotten, especially in these sort of more regional countryside places, the very apologetic owners who are like, so sorry, we used to be open more, and then COVID, or I've been under the weather, forgive me, the menu's not full. They get very, very, for lack of a better word, old school Japanese, with their apologies. So it might have been something like that for him saying like, that's why we kind of, we do the breakfast and an early lunch, but then we take this long break because he has to rest. But it's interesting because at the same point you mentioned the food menu, what struck me was the coffee. So in sort of the entryway on the side, there's a sort of a indoor-outdoor porch. And I took a photo of it with gigantic bags of coffee beans from all around the world. So you could actually buy up your coffee beans there as well to take home with you. So he had that. And then in the main spot, near where we were sitting, do you remember there was a kind of a raised stage which had a bunch of instruments on it? So, obviously that they had some live shows there in the not too distant past.
Because he said actually, because I don't know if you remember why he said he didn't do lunch anymore. Do you remember why?
No, I don't. I didn't. I don't have.
So I've got written here sabori lunch, which I presume means that like sabota, like he stopped doing it or whatever, or give it up, But but he said it was to avoid fighting with customers.
I don't remember. I don't remember that at all.
I'm not quite sure. I'm not quite sure what he meant, but I think people were coming in, and either he just couldn't be bothered with like different orders, or it was something like that. But I remember because I specifically wrote it down. I've also got here that he perked up when we mentioned Mingus. So we obviously got as far as chatting about Mingus and other places that we had been. But he actually said he built that stage a year ago, but there hadn't been any jazz played on it yet.
Oh, interesting, because I have in my picture, it's got a full drum kit there.
There is a drum kit on it, yeah. So like it's definitely ready to be played on, but he said, it's got the obligatory Marilyn Monroe poster in the background as well, but he said, I built it a year ago, and I guess then with a combination of maybe COVID and his health and everything else, that it just hasn't happened. So
that comment's hysterical, and I don't remember that at all. I definitely would have written. I must have gone maybe when I was looking around the back area, because there's that whole big back and second floor space too. Remember, all with the wood. So it was either that or I'd gone to the bathroom. But that's a hysterical comment, especially considering that he, what's it, Taki Murasan, I think was his name. Like we were saying, very chatty, very smiley, really, really, just friendly dude. He let us walk all around the place.
To
pictures
us,
everywhere.
To us, yeah.
Maybe so. Just the shock of having us walk in on a Saturday morning and be like, hey, "Can we get a coffee and an A-set, please?" He might have been like, "Wow, okay, you came all this way." But I thought it was a real pleasant surprise, because there wasn't this now that after we went and then before we recorded today, I was looking around online. There's actually not a lot of information about it. There's a few things here and there, but not a lot. And most of it focuses on his like omrice cooking for lunch, which I'm surprised you didn't order that. Seems it's a famous omrice place. So,
well, I sort of got like a version of that, I think, it was the omelette, but it was that same sort of thing for the breakfast. But like ever the sort of one to be exploring around corners. I actually, like you said, there was off where the kitchen was. When you came in, off to the left was the kitchen, off to the right was the main part where we sat, and then the stage at the back. But actually, just down by the kitchen, there was what I possibly could have been like the original building. Almost had that feel of like, what was there before they maybe extended or something, where customers would have sat, and it was set up much more like a kind of the kind of kisa that we expect. It had the amp, it had the speakers, it had a TV screen, and then really curiously, in between the speakers, possibly the first and only time that we'll see this, was a motorbike. Which had a picture of Miles Davis sort of hung at a diagonal angle just above the motorbike. Do you remember that? No, it was like a Honda motorbike, and it's got like an old helmet and everything on it. So I don't know if a customer just got drunk, drove it in, and then they left it, or it was deliberate. There's a couple of saxophones kicking about, and also then, of course, there's this beautiful photo that I was able to get of Love Supreme with a little what do you call it? Plaque from the shrine that you buy when you go to the shrine for New Year's or whatever kind of ceremony, and a little coffee guide, just resting on top of a bunch of CDs, which actually became the cover of that zine, the first zine that I did this year for Rare Mag. So if you have that zine, you'll recognize that photograph from the cover. It's on the front and the back as well. But it was just that part of the shop was so like, there's a whole load of masks. It's got the One Day in Harlem posters, like a Count Basie album. There's all sorts of just.
It was quite separate to the sort of the front space, which made me think again as well. Like you mentioned that it's probably mostly locals, and maybe not all of them are like real jazz kisa heads. It seemed like all of the records and all of that bric-a-brac was in the back room, where there was a place to sit too, and you could sit upstairs. But Philip, you must have taken a picture of this too, though, if you got to mention it. The unbelievable drink mat with that sort of sketch of Louis Armstrong. Really nice. I've got a great picture.
It was on the cups as well, right?
Yes. So it was obviously he'd had them sort of made to order. Definitely. I mean, it was a great start to the day, because again, we didn't know what we were going to find there. And I do see, a little breaking news for Vanguard, @MarkVanguard_coffee. Is on Instagram with just 11 pictures, and very recently. So if you can't wait the 6 months to see Philip's pictures when he puts them up on the website, you can see a couple
6
of pictures.
months, you'll be lucky.
I was trying to be generous there. Yeah, you can see a couple pictures of just the structure and the little coffee porch I mentioned. Of course, a close-up picture of the rice, which I'll pass on. 3 pictures of a couple sandwiches, and then, a nice external shot. So, Vanguard. Yeah, it's interesting how some of these, we've seen this in a couple of other places we visited, especially in the countryside, that they'll sort of, obviously somebody tells them, a customer or maybe their kid, oh, you need to get online, you need to make like a Twitter account, or you need to make an Instagram account or a Facebook page. And they'll do it, and you'll see like 3 or 4 posts like immediately, and then just complete radio silence, as if they just completely gave it up, So it looks like Vanguard Coffee is one of those. But it was a great spot. I mean, definitely if you're down near Hiroshima, it's well worth heading out there. But again, get there early, because it's 7 to I've got it 7:30 to 11 in the notes here. So they close early.
Yeah, I had the same. Yeah, so it's definitely I was really pleased that we got in, because I thought it was a really unique place and definitely somewhere worth documenting. And it was really nice to chat to him, and just one of those fortuitous things that we happened to go for breakfast, and had we been even like an hour later, it would have probably been Giotto, kind of when we got to the door. So yeah, great place. And then we were kind of like on the move at this point, right? So are we still in Hiroshima? No, we are. We're sort of just outside Hiroshima, but then we moved to the second place, and was it the second and only place of the day, or did we go to?
This was the only. No, we went to place
prepared as ever.
Yeah, no. God, mine. Hold on, I'm seeing that this was the last place that day. No, that's nonsense. What? Because we picked up Julie we went down to Okayama after that and picked her up, and then we went over to Jordan in the early evening.
Yeah, I think we've arbitrarily split them for the episode, but yeah, this was the second place, and the second place of 3 this day. You're right. Yeah, we were heading back towards. In fact, we're heading up to Okayama. That's what it was. And I think the second place that we're going to talk about now was actually on the way, wasn't it? In
Fukuyama City, which is
Fukuyama. That's it. Thank you.
Yeah, not a huge town, well known for its castle, which is right next to the station, which is one of those few castles, I believe that wasn't burnt down in the war or in an earthquake. So I think it's one of the few sort of original structures, which is why it's well known. Not a lot that I could see happening otherwise in Fukuyama City. Kind of one of those in between.
There's quite a buzz,
places.
though, I remember, around the station, wasn't it? Wasn't that the station that was sort of like quite a lot of? Didn't we sit outside the station for a bit?
We did. Well, because
in the sun, was that Fukuyama?
They had set up a little sort of a grassy area with tents and stuff because of the castle. That's the main. So people come there. A lot of tourists. Japanese tourists as well, and it's also a city that's sort of like in between 2 bigger cities of Hiroshima and Okayama. So it is a place that you do pass through. So yeah, a little bit busy, but we had to walk. My memory was that it was quite hot already down south, and we walked a good half an hour to get to our next joint, or was it not really that long? It seemed pretty long to get there.
Not even close. I tell you what we did do. We spent a good half an hour probably waiting. So I think we walked around the perimeter of the castle. Then there's I have a photo of a temple that we passed as well, and then an absolutely terrifying election poster, which I'll definitely post, of a man called Murakami with a dog, which is absolutely terrifying.
I remember that one.
Anyway.
Yes, we talked about that.
Yeah?
Yes, I remember.
So,
I don't think I took a picture, but I totally remember that poster. Yeah.
Yeah, it's terrifying.
Well, that's a whole other. That's listen. If we ever run out of Jazz Kisa, that's a whole other photo project.
Election posters.
The
I wonder
history
if
of election
voted
posters
for
in
him.
Japan. They're remarkable. But yeah, that's right.
Dog's a star. He's even got a YouTube channel, so that's probably worth following up. But yeah, so we walked around past the temple, and it was one of those days where it was quite hot. There's not a lot of cover from trees, and that kind of concrete streets, and it was a little oppressive. But we got round the corner, and sandwiched between 2 fairly older traditional type houses was one of these absolutely like ultra modern concrete houses that you often get in Japanese cities. Like really, like I love the look of them. I mean, I don't know what they're like to live in, but poured concrete, rectangular box, and from the front it's got basically 3 sort of there's kind of like a what looks like a garage door and a couple of windows, and you kind of go in behind the initial bit of concrete, and there's actually a door in. And this place was called, rather unusually, it was called Jazz in Doto. And we couldn't quite work out even the pronunciation, but we arrived typically a little early. I think we knocked the door. It was supposed to open at 2:00. We knocked the door. I think it was a no, and then we just hung around.
You're forgetting. You are forgetting. I remember this very much. We were across the street, and in front, and you can see.
No, this is after we went in. This was after we went in.
That we met the wife? No,
we went
she was
in
out
and knocked.
gardening. Remember, she was out
No, I know,
doing the
because
gardening.
we went in and knocked. And there was either no response or no one came out. And then we hung around outside, and this woman came out to tend the garden, right?
Okay, I don't remember the initial knock. So, wow, this is actually
I don't either. It may not be true. Sorry.
Riveting podcasting here. But you see, the thing is, because
was it a knock or was it not?
I think we were
find out on next week's episode.
We were across the street, and we saw this lady wearing one of those really wide brimmed, wicker hats, doing the gardening, and a little bit gardening in front of this concrete sort of front of the house that you mentioned, and we were like, oh, okay, so she must be, the owner or the co-owner. And then when we talked to her, then she said, oh, okay, it's a little early. Let me see if the master's ready. So it was like, okay, so the husband is in back getting ready. So she ran off and came back in 2 or 3 minutes, and then was like, oh, okay, he's just about ready. You can come in. So we did get in maybe 1 or 2 minutes early, which is, obviously a big imposition, but that was how I remembered it.
It was also very fortunate, actually, because when we got in, this place was, it's really super, like, ultra-modern kind of interior, really gorgeous, but
it's the kind of place that would be like, you'd think would be like a gallery or a really modern hair salon, like near my office in Montesando or something like that. Or, there's been a couple jazz places we've went to, like the one in... what was the one in Fukuoka on the outskirts? That was sort of a big concrete bunker type shape.
Nishimura?
Yes, Nishimura Kobyo. That's right. So it was kind of shaped like that, but much smaller. I've gotten written here in my book just that it's just basically a square concrete room with only one sort of sofa and a couple chairs at the counter. Yeah. So it's not like he's expecting a lot of customers at all.
No. So it's basically that room. One end, there's a kind of a long, narrow window. And then in front of that is the speakers and the sound system. And then, as you said, there's one table and two sofa chairs facing the speakers, which we elected not to sit on usually because it's kind of easier sometimes to photograph if you're sitting in particular from sort of a corner type thing. So we sat up at the counter, and even at the counter, there was only like 4 or 5 seats. And pretty much within about, 15, 20 minutes, it was completely full, right?
With people who were clearly, there had been some sort of an event, a neighborhood event earlier in the morning. So somebody had come in to say thank you to the master for whatever he did at the Matsuri, at the festival. And then a guy came in, a couple guys came in quite older. And the one who sat next to me, and Philip, you know me well, immediately I was like, oh no, this guy wants to speak English to me. I can tell. I could tell right away.
There is no
right
more.
Away he wanted
there's
to speak
no more
English.
Enjoyable feeling, right? I don't like to abandon people in situations at the best times, but like, see when those situations arise when we're together, I immediately have no guilt or any compunction about just going, right, you're on your own. Because I know what's going to happen.
Camera,
I'm not
lots
getting
of rustling of the camera bag and lenses, and I'm just like, oh Jesus. Okay, but as usual, my snobbiness was unfounded. Turned out to be an absolutely great guy. Really, really great guy. Had spent a lot of time working abroad, so he did speak English pretty well. Was a big music and audio fan. He played guitar, and he was just really excited because when we started dropping the names of places that we had been, not just down south, but all around Japan, he knew a lot of them. And we had a beer, we started chatting, and it was really great. And so, and I even remember because, like you said, because it's small and local, like I think the sofa, I've got a weird note here, Philip, I think a Western guy of some undetermined country, because he was speaking Japanese, came in with maybe his girlfriend or friend, and they were sitting on the sofa. And it was really interesting because I immediately got the feeling like this guy's a local and has probably got the exact same feeling that we've had many times. Like, oh, don't intrude on my local space here, you guys. You know?
Oh, very much so. Yeah,
He was like clearly would not look at us or talk to us at all. Like he wouldn't even make eye contact.
There's no interaction, and also that sense of like, no matter what language you spoke to him, he was gonna speak to you back in Japanese.
That was
he was
something
very much definitely sort of.
I was happy to see that though, because it just meant that, because again, Doto, it's not a particularly old place, but it's clearly got its like loyal customers. And for our audio friends out there, it's no joke. I mean, he's got a pair of Altec speakers. He's got a Macintosh. Something called a Studer D730. So maybe, as always, we have no idea about audio equipment, but he's got it all listed on the website. Good. Lots of pictures as well. You can see on the website. It's quite a nice one, jazzindoto.com. But the sound there was crystal clear. And yeah, I could see like if you lived in that area, that would be a place where you would just want to drop by and just, spend several nights a week just chatting with him. The owner and his wife were lovely. They were really friendly, extremely, extremely dandy, both of them. I've got it written down, like really gorgeous older couple. So clearly they must have been a bit popular back in the day locally, because you could sense as well that the guys who came in, the regular customers, were very deferential is not the right word, but they sort of spoke to him. They were calling him master. It wasn't like when we were in Coltrane and the guys were old friends bantering back and forth. You know what I mean? They were clearly like showing him like a sort of a level of respect. And it was just a really interesting dynamic. But I loved Doto. It was a wonderful spot.
Yeah, I mean, I think a couple of times when we were there, people came in with gifts as well. I've got artichoke. There was a lot of talk. Do you remember someone turned up with an artichoke?
That was probably when I was talking to an artichoke.
Well, the guy next to you, because he was sort of like, there was a couple of people who were like very comfortable with like, oh yeah, it's an artichoke. And then there was a couple that were very confused about like how you would eat it and what you would do with it. And I think somebody set to work on it. There was someone arrived with strawberries, and then someone arrived with an artichoke, and both were sort of got to work on as well. So like, it's very much a local joint. I think he said, or I've got written down here, that they've only been open 15 years, but like incredibly sustainable place, I think, because they lived upstairs, and so it's basically their house. Presumably they own the house, they own the land. And so I guess, overheads are low. You can keep going as long as you can keep going. Why not? Like it's just a really nice spot, pretty easy to maintain, beautiful sound. I mean, I didn't love the choice of records, and I think it's one of those places that when you look at the record wall, like there's nothing that really, I mean, there's a Thelonious Monk, but then there's sort of a lot of that kind of stuff that was sort of like, there's like bistro ballads. No. There's stuff like, it's just sort of like just on the cusp of like, great jazz artists play the compositions of Irving Berlin, just that kind of like between swing and sort of bebop-y, but not actually very... Well, I don't know, just like a little bit.
Do you think that because the way that he had the record, all the records and CDs were behind the bar, but he had that near the sofa, sort of like probably like that's where you do the rotating. You know how you go to a lot of Kisa, and they'll every month there'll be different ones profiled. I wonder if that was something to just, for the local customers maybe who aren't ready for the heavy stuff, because his collection was pretty deep behind the counter. You could see all the Orange Impulse. Once you see those, he's got some of the raw stuff. But I mean, I noticed that too. We seem to be running into that a lot on this trip, right, Philip? That for whatever reason, a lot of the places we went into were playing like some pretty soft stuff, or to my horror, a lot of vocal jazz, like over and over again, actually.
Yeah, I don't know if it's always been that way, or like we said before, sometimes maybe it's just things mellow with age, but then presumably they always had those records, so I don't really know. But yeah, I think sometimes you come away with, it's always interesting to see different places, to talk about them, to photograph them. But I sometimes, I think, particularly when we've gone further afield, you come away with a slightly underwhelming feeling that, you've got this huge sound system that could really be cranked and really be utilized, and yet, you're sort of listening to kind of, cocktail hour jazz, and it always feels a little bit flat sometimes, I think. But
that's right. I've just realized as well that maybe another reason for his popularity, though, at least in the region, is part of the Jazz Road series. So not Kyushu this time, but the Sanin Sanyo. Sanin Sanyo sort of refers to that area down by Hiroshima and Okayama, right? So Tashio-san, who wrote those books, has featured Doto in there. So anybody who's down in the region as a guide would know it, because that might explain also. Yeah, I have in my notes here, it says mostly locals on the day were there, but the master said people come from around. Audio people come around. So obviously, I mean, his audio system is well known, but like you said, if you're just playing that soft stuff, it does seem a bit mottainai.
Yeah, absolutely. Although, interestingly, for anyone who's really deep into the podcast, God help you. But one of the things that came up in where I have photographed just from being there was actually, which I'm sure I've probably seen and not really twigged before, but in one of those books, possibly the Jazz Road, was the Mimosa Bird, which I think I talked about. That was on a Shoten guy. It was the morning that I couldn't get into Uptown, or he wouldn't let me in early, and down in Takamatsu.
Yeah, Takamatsu. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and interestingly, it has pictures of Mimosa Bird as it was. Like, if you listen to the episode where we talked about it, I know you haven't been, James, but when I went, it had become very much like a lunch club, basically. There was a bit of jazz and a few posters, but interestingly, when you look at these photos on the Jazz Road thing, I mean, it's a full-on record shop with like a sofa in the middle, and clearly still very much like a jazz cafe, as opposed to what it had become by the time I got there, which was, basically a restaurant. With a few sort of traces of jazz.
I was disappointed when I'd heard that, because so many people had talked about it in the past, as being one of those spots. But yeah, it was sad to miss out on that.
Anyway, so look, a bit of a shorter episode, more of a 78 RPM than a 33 RPM LP this week, but that's the nature of it,
78 is shorter than 33?
78's shorter, yeah. You can only get like a few minutes on, right?
Don't listen to any jazz from that era, so I wouldn't know,
Yeah, of course. But we're going to pick up this conversation next week, where we're going to continue down in. Well, we'll be in Okayama, I think, next week, and we'll pick up the rest of the trip in those last couple of episodes.
Oh yeah, I'm looking forward to that, because a couple of really sweet joints in Okayama, and one of my favorite cities actually in Japan, Kurashiki, which I had not been to, I think, for almost 15 plus years. And I believe, Philip, it was your first time there. So we had a great walk around and found an amazing jazz joint there. So yeah, it's definitely some really good spots down south, and a lot more to get to.
Also, the great restaurant refusal controversy in Okayama. Any listeners in Okayama can confirm if I'm being paranoid or not. And also, James, I have to say, I think in next week's episode, I think it is. It's my all-time favorite photograph of you.
Of me?
Which is not easy, because every time I think of it, even without looking at the photo, when I think of the photo, it makes me laugh.
I'm so photogenic. But, there's so many to choose from. But this is a you've dropped a surprise here. I don't recall any exciting or funny or embarrassing pictures from. Oh no, it's not from when we went to the Funky Daitorios. Is it where? Oh no!
Oh no!
It's not when we went.
It's not that. No.
Oh, okay. So we sometimes fit in some non-jazz events on
about
trips,
that one as well.
And we went to good friend of ours, the Funky Daitorio, the Funky President, DJ and bar owner, to his sort of DJ night at his bar in Okayama. But I don't recall any questionable activity on my part that would cause such an embarrassing photo, but you never know when it gets to be late. So.
Well, it's not so much embarrassing, just comedy. And now I've put so much pressure in this photo, I don't know if I might have to cut this bit out, because maybe people won't enjoy it as much as I do, but I don't know. It just always makes me laugh when I think of it. Anyway, right. So look, that we'll leave it there for this week for episode 79. Next week, or the next couple of weeks, will be episode 80, which, if I'm not mistaken, and all being well, you will be recording from the United States of America.
Yes. I suppose by the time this is up, we'll know. But yes, shout out to the very, very fine people of Southern California who are going through an absolute horrific experience as we record this today. I really hope that by then, when I'm there, things obviously have calmed down a bit and people are able to at least find some way to get back home. But yes, I will be in the lovely region of Southern California. We'll have a couple episodes there, and then not too long until you get back, though, right? Did we break that on the last episode? We did. Yes,
I'm gonna get some things done this weekend, I think.
Excellent.
I'm gonna get some flights booked this weekend, hopefully. So yeah,
nice. I will get on my trusty Google map and start planning out the route. Can't wait.
Let the planning commence. Right. Listen, in the meantime, you take it easy. Safe travels. Don't forget your mask. And
yes,
talk to you soon.
You bet. Talk to you soon, buddy. Bye-bye.
All right. See you later. Bye-bye.